Hi everyone and welcome to the third week of Muse. Today's lesson is called Contrast. It's the lesson on analysis. So this course has three parts: writing, analysis, and research. Today we're going to be focusing again on analysis. So let's go ahead and start off with the definition of contrast. What does it mean to contrast something? And this is something that we'll be using in our essay, since the essay we'll be writing is a contrast sort of essay. We're going to be contrasting two things. So obviously it'd be good to start off with the definition of contrasting. To contrast something is to point out differences between two things that are related. So it's kind of a tricky word to define because the two objects have to be somewhat related. They have to be similar enough where you can point out the differences. So they have to be related, but you're not really focusing on their similarities. Instead, you're focusing on their differences. Let's go ahead and give some examples. So here I have a lime and a lemon. They are definitely related. They're both fruits. They're both a citrus fruit. They both have a similar shape. So they're related enough where we can easily sort of like compare them, but we're pointing out the differences, not their similarities. So if we were to contrast these, we could say the lime is green, whereas the lemon is yellow. The lemon is sour, whereas the lime is extremely sour, at least in my opinion. So the two objects have to be somewhat related, but you're focusing on the differences. Let's give one more example. I have two hats here, a fireman hat and a cowboy hat. So they're both hats. They're both related in some way, but we're going to focus on the differences. So I don't know. I think a fireman hat is mainly for safety, and a cowboy hat would be more for looks and just to keep the sun off your face. So they have different purposes. One's usually made out of leather. The other one's made out of plastic and metal and whatever else they put in a fireman hat. So just to review our definition, to contrast something is to look at two things that are related but focusing on the differences. Alright, so here is a list of words that might be helpful to you as you write and think about contrasts. So these are words that help you point out things that are different. Words like nevertheless, although, on the other hand, but, on the contrary, conversely, still, even though, however, on the contrary, in contrast, whereas, instead, yet. So we're going to be talking about the Titanic again and writing about the Titanic, as well as another ship called the Costa Concordia. Now the Costa Concordia was a ship that sank, or pretty much sank, in 2012, I believe, and it was very similar to the Titanic in that there were a lot of people aboard and that they had to evacuate the ship. But there were also many differences. So we're going to be contrasting these two ships and pointing out differences. So words like nevertheless, on the other hand, however, can help you make those contrasts. For example, you could say aboard the Titanic, all of the passengers were very civilized and didn't push and shove. However, aboard the Costa Concordia, passengers nearly trampled each other trying to get to the lifeboats. So hopefully you can see how these words can help you point out those differences. You may want to pause the video and write these down. Okay, so now you might be wondering, well, I understand the assignment, I understand what the essay is supposed to be about, but what are some elements that I can contrast? What are some elements that I can look at the Titanic and look at the Costa Concordia and look for those differences? Well, you could look at the ship itself. You could notice differences between the design of the Titanic and the design of the Costa Concordia. You can contrast the captains. So how did the captain aboard the Titanic, how did Captain Smith act versus the captain aboard the Costa Concordia? You could also contrast the rescue. How were the people aboard the Titanic rescued versus the people aboard the Costa Concordia rescued? The evacuation. How did people exit the boat? How did people exit the boat on the Titanic, and how did they exit the boat on the Costa Concordia? The passengers themselves aboard the Titanic, there were very strict social classes. I don't believe the same classes were there for the Costa Concordia, so that would be a difference. Also, the way information was shared or not shared, how much did the crew tell the passengers aboard the Titanic versus how much did they tell the passengers aboard the Costa Concordia. You can also contrast the safety features aboard each of the ships, and lastly, the general behavior of the passengers. So this isn't a comprehensive list. You are free to compare and contrast other elements, but just to get you started, those are some ideas for you to think about. Okay, so assignments for today, you have a lot of videos. First of all, watch this video lesson. You have the option of reading chapters 9 and 10, so finishing up A Night to Remember. And then your third assignment is to watch 1 or 2 or 3 videos. You can either watch short videos that are like 2 or 3 minutes long. There's a link on the website for you to click on. Just watch a few of those, or if you feel like it, you can watch the entire 40-minute documentary that those clips are taken from. So it's up to you, but either way, it should give you a good foundation on what happened aboard the Costa Concordia. And then your fourth assignment is to take notes using the Venn diagram. So print that out. You may want to print that out while you're watching the videos. And lastly, submit your progress report. So in summary, remember that when we were talking about comparison, that was focusing on 2 things that were related, and we were focusing on the ways that they were similar. When we are contrasting, we also are talking about 2 things that are related, but we are pointing out their differences. So comparing has to do with similarities, contrasting has to do with differences. So remember, they have to be related, but you're focusing on the differences. Okay, well, this wraps up lesson 7 on contrasting. I hope that it was helpful for you, and if you have any questions, please let me know.